The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at jamesolivercoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster, offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience, no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its Alma Mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CFSHOW, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at jamesolivercoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's jamesolivercoffee.com. Hey, greetings, everybody. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I am your host, Craig Fahle. I appreciate you being here with us today as we broadcast live on Facebook Live. Don't forget, this show is available as a podcast a little bit later on today, and the video will be on deadlinedetroit.com as well. So you can always find it there. If you can't watch live, not a big deal. Well, another week in the books, and, I've got to say that this is becoming more and more difficult to do every week just because of the sheer volume of nonsense that we are witnessing on a daily basis in this country. And that is exactly what it is. I would like to introduce my esteemed guest this week. As usual, we have Allan Lengel, who is the editor and co-founder of Deadline Detroit. Hello, Allan.
Hello.
And Happy New Year as well, sir.
Thank you very much. Tova.
That's right. Nancy Derringer, contributor to Deadline Detroit, is back with us again once. We always appreciate that, Nancy. Thank you.
And I always appreciate you.
And Nancy, too. Nancy Kaffer, of course, of the editorial team at the Detroit Free Press, joining us once again. It's always a pleasure.
It's happy to be here.
And, of course, my friend Saeed Khan, who is a lecturer in Near East and Mideast Studies at Wayne State University, also lectures at Rochester College, frequent guest on the program. Saeed, welcome back, sir.
Great to be here at Sid and Nancy's.
There you go. I like it. Saeed and Nancy. There you go. That works pretty well. All right. As I mentioned in the intro, the sheer volume of nonsensical stuff this week is hard to top. And I started going back through stuff that happened on Monday. And as I said to the email that I sent you guys yesterday, things may change in the next 20 hours. And they certainly did. We now have another person coming out against the Trump administration, a woman named Olivia. I had it on my screen. I just lost it. But she was the appointee that Vice President Mike Pence put on the coronavirus task force. And she has now come out and said that the entire response to this thing has been botched from day one. We've been fed misinformation since day one. She's now made a video for these Republican voters against Trump that just went out this morning, was on, of course, the New York Times, Washington Post, a couple of other spots as well. And I'm sure Morning Joe went nuts with this thing today as well. But we are starting to see the real truth behind the coronavirus response. And Nancy, I mean, last week we talked about this with the Woodward book revelations and everything else. Let's go with Nancy Kaffer on this one first. But, it's not surprising in any way, shape, or form that we were misled about this. But the gravity of it and the extent to which they have gone to hide the truth from people seems to be a bit beyond the pale here.
Yeah, I would agree. I wasn't particularly stunned that it turned out that the president knew more than he admitted publicly. I mean, he's the president of the United States. He has access to more information than literally anyone else on the planet. So it really required some magical thinking to believe that he didn't didn't have access to this information. Understanding it, of course, being a different thing. But yeah, no, I am also surprised at this depth. It's really, I think probably magical thinking is a good word to use there too. How did anyone involved in this anticipate their actions working out? I mean, they must have sincerely believed that it would go away. I mean, I don't know, but then that's at odds with what we're learning that they said and thought behind the scenes. I have really no sense to make of it. Sorry. I don't think there is sense to make of it.
I mean, the president, though, he played his card this week in that town hall meeting that he did with George Stephanopoulos when he said, I never downplayed the virus. I actually upplayed the virus when it comes to the action I took.
Upplayed, totally a word. Yeah.
Upplayed is totally a word. And also in his presser yesterday, he was talking about what he called herd mentality, which I think is a good apt descriptor for his followers. They definitely have a herd mentality when it comes to these sorts of things. But he was talking about herd immunity and was basically suggesting that, well, hey, if we're going to get there, lots of people might die, but that's just kind of where we are. And I mean, I think we're getting a true sense as to just how little he wanted to engage on coming up with any sort of real solution to this. And I don't know, again, I say this every week, I don't know if this is going to impact the way people vote, but it seems that it's having an impact on people's way of thinking about this guy.
I mean, who knows? How do you rate that? You had all the information that he was unqualified and unstable back in 2016, and he was still elected. I mean, this is more evidence that he's unqualified and unstable and is a terrible president. And is that going to move the needle for people who somehow didn't get that before? I mean, cool if it does, but
I think the best you can hope for is it doesn't move the needle toward Trump. But I think people don't care. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, we've had 5, 6, 7 books come out, the most damaging information that you could possibly have on a guy, and his people don't care if he tells the truth. They care that he is their leader that is trying to preserve whatever it is, their white existence or whatever it is. All these things don't matter in terms of new revelations. I mean, how many new revelations can we get that Donald Trump has done something wrong, that he's been deceitful, that he's been dishonest, whatever, that he hasn't handled? I mean, it's not a secret he hasn't handled the pandemic correctly, and yet his followers, I mean, we saw in Macomb County the other day, I mean, they love him. They don't care. They don't care.
The bigger question, though, is that swath of, aside from his hardcore followers, I wrote a column at the end of the year, before the end of last year, before the pandemic, about whether or not the respectable Republicans that we all know, your more Chamber of Commerce, country club type Republicans who held their noses and voted for him in 2016 because they thought he was personally distasteful, but they knew that he would deliver tax cuts and smaller government and conservative Supreme Court justices. That's the group that I wonder if they're going to hold their noses and vote for him again, or if the pandemic and everything that has come out is enough to convince them that that's a terrible move.
Well, I mean, but you listen to the way he has been waffling on everything from a vaccine to whether or not he took appropriate action, whether or not masks are something that work. I mean, just look at the interaction between he and Redfield from the CDC the other day, where he said, look, there's not going to be widespread distribution of any virus until probably the middle of next year. And the president basically said, oh, no, he didn't understand what he was reading. I'm sorry. I have a real problem with that. I believe Redfield knew exactly what the hell he was talking about based on experience and research that has been done in past situations like this to know how the vaccine system is going to work. And the president still is saying, no, he didn't understand it. I'm the only one that understands it. And Nancy, I mean, I know that this troubles you, Nancy Derringer, the way that it does me. But at some point, it's just the man needs to just shut the hell up and follow the advice of the scientists. Maybe it's too late. I don't know.
Of course it's too late. I mean, my cynicism meter is broke apart like in one of those, Looney Tunes cartoons where the springs fly out and everything. I mean, there is he's not going to change. He hasn't changed one bit since he took the presidency. The people who love him are not going to change. They're not going to change their votes. I agree with Nancy too, that this is, it's down to the tiny group of, Chamber of Commerce Republicans, the few people who somehow don't have an opinion on this yet. And maybe he can swing, maybe a few old people can be swung by the fact that Joe Biden is an old dude too and seems to be fairly decent. And that's all I really have to say about it. We're at an absolute stalemate, and it's not going to break for another 45 days.
Well, Saeed, I mean, that's 45 days that we still have to worry about this. And obviously, we've got to worry about the coronavirus a lot longer than that, despite what some conservative people that I'm friends with, believe it or not, post on Facebook, like only 45 more days of coronavirus, which, is buying into this notion that this is somehow some sort of a scam. But Saeed, I mean, we're surrounded by people that are willing to overlook this stuff and just assume that this is and actually talking that herd immunity is the way we should go. And I don't get it.
Well, I don't know if herd mentality was a Freudian slip or I think it was actually strategically placed. I think it's one of the few times that the broken watch was correct. That's exactly what we're finding with him. I mean, this is a phenomenon that I didn't ever expect in my lifetime to see happen here in America. And of course, we're seeing this happening in so many parts of the world. In India, for example, the cult around Prime Minister Modi. Here you've got a 25% reduction in their GDP. You've got a nuclear power with which they're having loggerheads on two different fronts on their border. This is with China. And their big obsessions right now are a second-rate Bollywood actor who either killed himself or was poisoned. And so they're diverting all the attention to the public so you too can help solve this mystery. And then they're blaming Pakistan for all the other woes. There is no sense of focus on really where the dangers are. They're demonizing Muslims, they're demonizing Christians. And so you're talking about 45 days, Craig. The crazies aren't going away in 45 days. There's not going to be a rapture one way or the other on November the 4th.
Well, I don't know if that makes me feel good or bad that this is not limited to the United States at this point.
Well, I mean, it depends on how that glass is looking for you, Craig.
He's right, though. Trumpism is not going away. And is almost like a global phenomenon. Go ahead.
And one thing that's also important to remember is that another term for the crazies is our fellow Americans, and calling them crazy is, I get it, but it's like maybe not the best way to achieve détente after an election.
And I mean,
because they're interested in détente. I mean,
deplorable.
Well, they're not, but we still have to be a country together, and unless we're willing to wash our hands of the whole thing, I mean, which I'm not, then we have to figure out a way to come back together. And, I don't know how we do that. If I did, I would be writing it in columns and telling people to do it. But I think, it's some people behave like caricatures. Absolutely, they do. The people who invaded the Target maskless in Florida, they're behaving like caricatures. They're asking to be called crazy. And then they thrive on that because they use that as evidence that, the liberals don't understand their whatever. But I mean,
deplorable. Yeah, right.
But there certainly are people who are inviting them. But we do. I've written several pieces. I'm not big on civility because I think it's sort of like lipstick on a pig. It's like being a surface of niceness, a veneer that doesn't penetrate. But I think we have to get to empathy, which is really trying to understand where people are coming from. And I think a lot of that's been lost, and that's part of what got us here. And I don't know. I realize it's not a popular opinion right now. And again, a lot of people are making themselves into caricatures. I get that, but they are people. So
well,
look at me, joyless and chiding. That's why you brought me on, right?
Of course.
I was going to say, I interviewed a just recently retired FBI agent who's worked his entire career on extremist groups, and he was saying he says I hope I'm wrong, but he says I don't think I am. That there is going to be either whether Trump loses or wins, one side is, he says there's going to be some domestic terrorism. And in meaning whatever, something's going to be blown up or people are going to start getting shot in the streets. I think somebody was at I posted something on Facebook, and somebody was at the Second Amendment rally, a journalist covering it and saying, hey, there's a civil war is on its way. I mean, the people with the guns, it's scary on both sides. I mean, there's people willing to commit violence on both sides, but it scares me when I see people at the Capitol with the long guns and the AK-47s, and they're not, they're
especially
carrying
the 12-year-old girl that was carrying out there yesterday.
Yeah, they say they're carrying it because of the rights, but they're also carrying it to intimidate.
course.
The police are not going to mess with them, and they're going to,
there was a Washington Post ran a piece last week or the week before where they recruited a number of really serious people, including Jennifer Granholm, to game out scenarios of what happens in 4 scenarios for the election. Did you guys read this piece?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
scary.
One was a substantial Biden win. One was we don't know what happens on election. I can't remember all 4 of the scenarios, but only in the scenario of the substantial Biden win did the role playing lead to not a violent outcome. And all the other 3 scenarios, which were more conflicted or confused, and they had very experienced political people simulating the decisions that they believe their folks that are actually in these roles would make. And we're starting to see a lot of that, sowing doubt about the mail-in voting. The president, demanding that results must be delivered on election night because otherwise, the longer it goes on, the longer people can tamper with it. I mean, so this is not a crazy fringe entity saying that there's 4 paths and 3 lead to violence. This is the Post with very serious academics.
Well,
so that's
I do want to give a bit of a shout out to the Michigan Senate, the Republican-led Michigan Senate, which actually passed a bill this week that would allow the Secretary of State to start counting the ballots early so we wouldn't have as big a delay. Nancy's shaking her head. Did I screw something up there?
They only allowed them to open the envelopes a day.
Process, not to count.
Not
to count, but at least get the project started. So
See,
some movement is needed.
I mean, it's like, oh my God, there's blood spurting out of this giant hole in my neck.
There's an aspirin.
Band-Aid. Yeah.
No, we supported it as an editorial page. But I worry that's a little bit of a poison pill. It's 1 day to process, and how. Clerks wanted it. Clerks asked for it. I think they would have preferred longer to begin processing ballots or even tabulating them earlier. And a lot of other states do that. And a lot of other states, if you vote absentee and they begin to process your ballot weeks before the election. And just like if you vote in person, if you've spoiled your ballot somehow, misfilled it out, made a mistake somehow, you can correct it even though you're an absentee voter because they're able to look at it weeks in advance. We still don't have that here. And I worry that, we will still have, this won't be enough to get us to a final count quickly. And then the GOP can say, well, we gave you what you wanted. And why are you still not able to deliver results?
Yeah, well,
so I don't know. I'm pessimistic sometimes.
At least an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement, though, that there is going to be an issue if they don't address it. And there's a possibility that there could be some sort of compromise that gets worked out there that gets to the governor's desk in time. I'm not sure.
I think it's a case of taking what you can get being better than nothing. And so, like I said, we supported this and we're for it. But it would be nice if we were more in line with other states that allow longer periods to process.
Incrementalism.
Well, incrementalism. Hey,
and sometimes that's what you've got to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you take what you can get. Let's move on
here.
Such
high stakes here.
I wanted to talk about this. Bill Barr is all over the place this week. Bill Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, came to Hillsdale University, which is our own Institute of Patriotic Learning here in the state of Michigan, which we'll get into a little bit later. Well, it is at the college level. That's true. Patriotic College, I guess, would be Hillsdale. But he said a lot of stuff at Hillsdale, which just really shocked me for a sitting attorney general to say some of these things. One, suggesting that the lockdowns that we have had and the no access to certain businesses and certain types of things that has been enacted all across the country by different governors is the worst civil rights violation since slavery. He said that the other day, which really sort of shocked me. So why don't we start dissecting that one first? Because I think that's the one that sort of got the most shockwaves. But there's other stuff in here that we need to talk about. But let's talk about that for just a second, because I have not been stopped from going anywhere I really need to go, with the exception of a couple of restaurants that I can't eat indoors at. But for the most part, nobody's telling me I can't leave my house. Nobody's telling me I can't drive somewhere. And I'm still able to actually, converse and see people and stuff like that.
I would think if this were the 1860s and he were the Attorney General, he would be defending slavery. But that's another point. But I think it's an insult to the whole legacy of slavery and stuff for this privileged dude in Washington who has really totally lost his way as Attorney General. I mean, we've had it's, I've always advocated, I say the Attorney General's position should not be a cabinet position. It should be an appointment like the FBI director and the other, federal agencies there. The president doesn't need internal lawyer the way he's acting. He has in-house counsel, he has outside counsel. The guy is on a campaign and he's trying to twist things, but it's insulting to compare it to slavery. I mean, geez, I still got to carry out and go to a restaurant, and it's just crazy,
And it is. I mean, then he went a step further and said, "Oh, by the way, Black Lives Matter doesn't care about Black lives. They're just looking for pawns." He went to say that at Hillsdale. Of course, a receptive audience there, I'm sure. And then the other thing that he floated this week was the possibility of sedition charges against protesters in the country, and also trying to drum up some sort of charges to use against the mayor of Seattle for setting up that protest zone in that city. And I actually talked to a former federal prosecutor the other day about this, just to pick this person's brain a little bit about the ridiculousness of the charges against the mayor, potentially bringing charges against the mayor. And this person was incredibly flustered and shocked at the discussion about this. I mean, sedition is always one of those things that has created problems in the United States in terms of the definition of sedition and who gets charged with sedition. That's been a problem going back to John Adams. This is not new, but anytime somebody brings that up, you realize they're at the end of, they don't have any other options. Well, if you don't agree with me, then that's sedition. That suggests to me that you have no possibility of winning a consensus on an issue. It's a cowardly charge, in my opinion. And I think Bill Barr overstepped big time with this one. Nancy, you're laughing down there.
I'm just thinking that sedition is one of those things I have to always look up when I hear it, because it's always thrown around with treason and so forth, and I have to kind of look up what the finer point of this is. But yeah, I mean, Bill Barr went off the rails again a long time ago. We know he's off the rails. He's a train that is actually plowing through the cornfield, ruining the crops and scaring the animals. But what can we do? 45 days, baby.
Who knew we'd be longing for the days of Jeff Sessions?
I know, exactly. I mean, that's the thing about the Trump administration that always blows my mind when I think about it, is the people who have emerged as heroes are people like Jeff Sessions. I mean, who knew?
Well, let's not get crazy.
But I mean, this is clearly despotic talk, though, Saeed. I mean, you're talking about Modi, and it's very similar to what you're going to see in some of these third world countries. That if your political enemies are guilty of sedition and therefore they should be punished, this is not the type of discussion that we are used to hearing in the United States, and certainly I don't think we should stand for it.
Yeah, so I think we can pretty much
say, and then Nancy.
I think we can dispel the term third world anymore. I don't know where the boundaries are for that. But I think it's also interesting about what was omitted from his remarks in Hillsdale. A member of the Boogaloos kills federal officers in the San Francisco Bay Area. And both Vice President Pence and Bill Barr, well, at least Pence acknowledged that somebody killed them, but absent is any kind of link to a particular political ideology, and the dog whistling or the overt statements that have encouraged and enabled this. So, I mean, this is far more insidious.
Nancy, go ahead.
I was just going to say about people who have worked for this administration, it kind of reminds you of one of those horror movies where people are worshiping the demon that wants to destroy the world, and they wind up getting killed. It's like, what is your upside for, like in season 2 of Buffy when everybody's with me on this, right?
Always going back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
When a Cathla was going to eat the world, and it's like, what is your incentive? Why are you on team destroy the world? Because there's no way out of this administration for people. There's no one who's like, and then I did 2 years with the Trump administration. It was great, and I left on great terms with a good retirement, and I'm happy. It's like they get indicted, they get fired by Twitter, they get there's no. It's like any movie where there's an evil crime syndicate, and it's like, oh well, your time with our gang is at an end. And I mean, it's just not like when people get involved, I wonder what they see their exit strategy as. That how are they leaving? And
that would require foresight.
Well,
I mean, can you name anybody who left under like conditions that you would describe as like pleasant to leave a job under?
Michael Caputo, because at least he's getting medical care.
I guess Kelly and Conway kind of left without it being, but you know, at the
Did she
expense
ever
of her,
really leave though?
well, and at the expense of her family visibly imploding on social media, which is heartbreaking. You know, the poor daughter is, you know, anyway. So yes, it's still not good, even though she wasn't fired by tweet or indicted. Still not a great exit strategy. So I mean,
you know, some others got 3 squares and a cot, so you know that's not so bad.
Right,
I guess.
Right. So I mean, like, you know, if God forbid he gets reelected, I mean, I've got to start to wonder how he's going to attract talent for the second. I mean, people for the second. We don't need to go that far for the second term, because there's no. What's the upside to working for this guy?
Based on the photographs that I see on the Daily from Kristen who's the press secretary?
McEnany.
McEnany.
Kayleigh.
McMinney. Yeah, Kayleigh McEnany. She's definitely going for Fox. I mean, she's got the Fox hair. She's got the Fox, you know, multi-hued, sparkly eyeshadow. She's got the Fox figure. She has the Fox voice. I think
yes.
Or a counter.
Actually cutting back on its hair and makeup budget, so she has to take that job with a lot of caution.
Exactly.
Allan, go ahead. You were about to say something there.
No, I was saying that she'll probably she could take a job as one of the CNN tries to have somebody sort of counter argument there, and I think she would be a good fit. There.
Oh,
she's pretty.
Okay. Speaking of the news networks, I just forgot about this one. I thought this was fantastic this week. President Trump goes on Fox and Friends on Tuesday morning and announces to Fox and Friends after he's finished with his 45-minute ramble, like he does. I don't know if you've ever watched those, but they're highly entertaining. But so he goes on his 45-minute rant, and at the end, he says, "Oh, by the way, we just struck a deal with you guys. I'm going to be on every Monday between now and the election." And no such deal had been struck. And Steve Doocy, at the end of this, Steve Doocy, God bless him, because I can't stand this guy. I've been making fun of him for years. But Steve Doocy at the end said, "No, we're not doing that." And so the president tried to basically insert himself into the show every Monday morning to give one of his rants. And Steve Doocy said, "No, we don't have a deal," because the producers whispered in his ear and said, "Oh, no, we're not doing that."
That's so interesting to me that Fox is not what's happening over at Fox, that they're not loyal soldiers like they were for so long. That is fascinating. And I wonder if it's indicative of a bigger shift, or if the hardcore will simply decide that Fox is problematic.
It's not complete. I mean, I don't think Brian Kilmeade has stopped panting and you know, dealing with how exasperated he was at the prospect that Trump would be on every Tuesday. So you're right. I think that there's definitely some cleavages in Fox right now, but you have to wonder if it's too little too late, because Trump has been trying to migrate people over to OAN and some other sources. So, I mean, even if you take a look at Drudge is downright critical of Trump now, but it doesn't seem to be moving the needle.
Well, it's funny. I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast this Olivia Troy person who is a staffer of Vice President Pence. And one of the things that she said was, in one of the coronavirus meetings, and they only have a certain amount of time to go through all this with the president spent about 45 minutes complaining that there aren't enough Trump-friendly people at Fox News. So he wasted the task force's time bitching about Fox News and their coverage of him, which was ridiculous. The other thing that she mentioned is that the president was actually excited about some of the social distancing things, because he said, "Wait, I don't want to shake these people's hands. I don't want to discuss any of these. I don't want to shake any of these disgusting people's hands." The president said this. She was at the meeting and he said this: "I don't have to shake their disgusting hands." So, you know, I mean,
he's been a long time.
It's you know what I found was
matter. He called the people disgusting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Christopher Wray was testifying yesterday, and the director of the FBI, and he starts talking about, Russia, the concerns about Russia being involved in our election. And here Trump is attacking him and saying, no, it's China. China's helping Joe. I mean, it's just so amazing the level of disrespect and just how everything is based on the election. As the woman who just stepped down, who said everything was about the election. And I've gotten that feeling from the very beginning. The whole pandemic has been all about the election, playing down things. It's insane. I mean, he would not have to campaign if he had acted presidential. If he had stepped up and been a leader, he would not have had to do one bit of campaigning. That would have been his campaign. He would have been a hero. And he's just, I think it's clear he's not capable of doing that. He's a great campaigner. He's not a great president.
All right, let's move on here. I did mention Michael Caputo. Of course, he was the spokesperson for the CDC, and he went on a Facebook Live video that he did the other day where he went a little off the rails. And said that there was going to be armed insurrection after the election. He also was accused of basically altering statements to fit the president's messaging on the pandemic, among other things. Said a lot of really, really bad things. But he also said that his mental health has definitely failed. Now it looks like he's taking a leave of absence from this position. He's, of course, a friend, and his mentor was none other than Roger Stone. So we get an idea of where this guy comes from. But Caputo, just in a rare public meltdown this week, and now apparently is taking a leave of absence. It was weird to witness this. And
have you noticed how many rare public meltdowns have happened in the last 4 years? When did they stop being rare? We had that one guy whose whole shtick was public meltdowns. What was his name? He was there for 5 seconds.
What?
The Mooch? No,
What was his real name?
Scaramucci. That's right.
Right. I'm getting old. But that seems like it's sort of the hallmark of this administration is
yes, but this one was complete with poetry, like goth poetry, Nancy. You would have appreciated it because he was talking about how the shadows on the ceiling of my lonely apartment are long. Just like listening to him, like, okay, take the cure off the turntable, dude, and get back to work.
Bauhaus, but okay.
Oh yeah, Bauhaus. There you go.
I think we've all agreed that the idea that there's going to be armed conflict after the election isn't actually that far-fetched. I mean, I think we just talked about earlier a relatively reasonable scenario where we think that that we've got a lot of potential for armed conflict.
Go Rwanda, though. I mean, take the machete out of the hall closet and go next door, or what?
No, I mean, we've got situations like what we saw in Kalamazoo, where there were peaceful protesters and there were Trump protesters, and the Trump protesters came armed for bear and decided to wreak havoc. I mean, of course that's probably not how Caputo was envisioning it going down.
Well, here's one way.
Probably say the innocent, pure Trump supporters, and then the evil Antifa or whatever coming after them.
Well, speaking of Christopher Wray, he did say Antifa is an ideology and not a group. Right. So that's something that I'm sure ticked off the president as well.
And that's what the agent who I interviewed this week said the exact same thing.
Well, we talk about violence after the election. Well, there's been violence before the election. Obviously, there's been a lot of conflict in this country. And we just learned this week that the federal government, some of the troops that were coming into Washington, D.C. to clear the square, Lafayette Park and all that kind of stuff, were stockpiling ammunition. And also, we're potentially going to use something they called a heat ray, which you turn it on and apparently it makes your skin feel like it's on fire, which tells me that maybe it is. But the fact that they were actually contemplating using a heat ray on American citizens on American soil is just ridiculous. I mean, it's like Mars attacks here. This is ridiculous.
In the story you sent, there was really just like one paragraph that summed this up, which is that they had developed it in the early 2000s, but shelved it amid concerns about its effectiveness, safety, and the ethics of using it on human beings.
Yeah, it may be a violation of the Geneva Convention. I'm not sure, but
we'll use it on our own people. Yeah,
that's right. It's not a violation of international law.
Yeah,
right. It's a. I feel like there's actually a a song in Dr. Horrible sing-along blog with my it's a freeze ray. Never mind. With my freeze ray, I will stop the world.
A freeze ray is okay. A heat ray, not good.
Some crazy ass supervillain stuff. Can I say crazy
I think I saw it in the Hulk. It's where. But the fact that they were actually talking about using this against citizens as riot control is pretty ridiculous. And Saeed, I'm glad you're with us today because I do need to ask you about this before we're all over the place today, just because it's been that kind of week. But we don't know. Did the president want to kill Bashar al-Assad or did he not want to kill Bashar al-Assad? Because he originally denied that there were any discussions about an extrajudicial killing of a foreign leader, but then came back and talking to Bob Woodward and said, yeah, I wanted him dead, but Mattis wouldn't let me do it because Mattis is a wuss. First of all, I'm not sure what kind of international incident that would create if indeed they assassinated a foreign leader at this point in time. But from your understanding, Saeed, what does international law say about that?
It's actually kind of a big no-no, has been for a long time, except that unfortunately, we haven't exactly been very loyal to international law. The sheer number of people that we've tried to take out, some being successful in it, some not. Allende, 73, bringing in Pinochet, for example, that was a dark era. Lumumba, 61, tried to get Fidel in 1961 as well with the exploding cigars and all of that stuff. Look, I mean, I fully can expect someone of his bravado saying, yes, we need to take Assad out. I don't think he has the sophistication of Henry II saying, who shall rid me of these meddlesome priests, and have 4 of them trot down to Canterbury inspired to kill Thomas of Becket. But I think the fact that he was hemming and hawing about this issue would probably not be seen as something out of the ordinary among a few of our presidents like Nixon. Some of the more declassified and profane tapes that have been coming out with his conversations about with Kissinger, especially making comments about Indira Gandhi's looks, are quite revealing. But it seems as though we have to consider whether Putin was the person who said, there, buddy, let's not talk about the A word of assassination. I've got bigger plans here, and one of them has the word Assad attached to it, which caused Trump to back down. He's just, of course, now blaming Mattis for that kind of restraint. So again, all of these things are quite possible.
Well, what would the reaction have been had they actually carried this out in the region?
Elation among a lot of American allies like the Saudis and the UAE. Iran would have been quite annoyed. It would have been, again, interesting to see whether Assad would be replaced by another member of the Ba'ath Party, or whether this would then be seen as a catalyst towards some real change. The latter wouldn't have happened. Russia would not allow that to happen. Iran would not allow that to happen, and nor would Syria. So I don't know if it would really change the equation that much.
Yeah, well, it's still the fact that the president has contradicted himself on this in just 1 year's time about whether or not he actually wanted to do it. Was he lying the first time? Was he lying the second time? Or was he lying both times? Did this discussion not actually happen at all? We have no idea, except that there is a lie in there somewhere, and that's not a shock in any way, shape, or form, because just add it to the 20,000 we've already been able to chalk up here.
Well, that also presumes linear thinking, and I'm not sure that's a presumption to necessarily have here either.
Very, very, very true. Well, we have been going for a little while here, and I want to make sure that we got to the big stuff here, and we did get to most of it, but maybe we should just go straight to Schmuck, because I've got some good candidates. Bill Barr was going to be my Schmuck of the week, but I think we went through most of the stuff that he did this week because he said a bunch of dumb stuff. So I guess we'll do Schmuck of the week. So who wants to go first this week? Nobody's stepping up. Nancy's got her hand up. She likes to go first.
Well, I've got two, and I don't want to. I always bring a backup Schmuck just in case Schmuck gets seized by somebody else. Since I'm going first, I guess I can mention them both. Probably I'm going to have to go with Roger Stone, who rose to the occasion in an interview with InfoWars, Alex Jones on InfoWars, and openly declared that if Trump has not declared the winner of the election on election night. He needs to declare martial law. I think he said all of the ballots from the state of Nevada need to be seized by federal marshals and held under lock and key. He would probably apply that to Michigan as well. In a normal world, if we still lived in something that resembled a normal world, this would be, rejected or dismissed as just, bullshit from a bullshitter. But in this case, we're not in a normal world anymore. So I am going to go with Roger Stone with a runner-up of Joe Rogan.
Oh, Joe Rogan. There you go.
Rogan, who said on his show that the forest fires in Oregon were set by leftists, which is not true. But if you wondered who Joe Rogan was, now you know.
Well, Joe Rogan also, of course, President Trump floated the idea of him hosting a 4-hour debate between he and Joe Biden. And I thought, yeah, Joe Rogan, that's exactly who we want. Now, granted, Joe Rogan has like 1 million times more viewers and listeners than I do on this program, but I can comfortably still say he is a jackass. Yeah. This is the man show guy, remember? This is the women in bikinis on trampolines guy. So
is it just knowing he exists?
I was just saying, Craig, maybe you have to up your jackassness.
Well, I tried. So there's a lot of people on the right that think I'm already doing a good job with that. So,
just like knowing Joe Rogan exists makes me feel stupider. It's
not
good.
It really is. Yeah.
Well, he does know MMA pretty well. So, all right. Who wants to go next? Saeed.
So, in honor of it being Schmuck of the Week and the fact that it is the start of the Jewish high holidays, if you'll permit me a troika. This will be Yin Li Meng, Guo Wengui, and Steve Bannon. The reason is that Yan is a Chinese virologist who floated the idea on the Tucker Carlson show that, in fact, the COVID-19 was artificially created in a lab in Wuhan, and of course had all kinds of flowery evidence to go ahead and show. Wasn't peer reviewed, and now it's been revealed that this was actually released by an organization called the Rule of Law Foundation, which was founded by Steve Bannon and was bankrolled by an alleged Chinese fugitive by the name of Guo Wengui, who put in $100 million into this effort. So I think this really calls into question whether, in fact, not only was it artificially created, which it seems is not true, but whether it even emerged from Wuhan itself.
Wow.
And is Guo, what was the second guy's name? Guo
Wengui.
Is he the guy whose yacht Steve Bannon was arrested on?
Can you believe it?
Well, and then Tucker.
Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel.
And then Tucker puts this person on the show. They don't vet this person at all. They don't do any research. And he's like, I'm shocked at this information. You've shocked me tonight. Tucker Carlson is just, he should be better than this. But alas, he is a tool. Yeah. Allan Lengel, who do you got as your schmuck?
I got it. And this may be a little unfair, but Robert Redfield from the CDC. I mean, he made statements which were honest statements, and then Trump attacked them, and then he tried to modify them. And I think at some point you have to say, this is my job, this is my obligation, this is my description of my job. If you don't like it, fire me. And he's really got Trump in a little bit of a box that he doesn't have to back down. I mean, how horrible, although maybe optics aren't a big deal for Trump, but how horrible would it be for Redfield to say, no, this is it, I'm not backing down, this is my story, and Trump has to fire him for telling the truth. And then the other thing is, and there's a little bit of Hillsdale College, which I think, giving a platform. I happen to be on the email list of the president from Hillsdale College. Somehow I can't remember how I got on it, but I've tried to engage him in some political discussions over time, and he never responds to me. But I think just to offer a platform where Barr feels so comfortable to really go even more off the rails. I don't know.
How long have you lived in Michigan, Allan? That's their job at Hillsdale.
Yeah.
Basically just foot soldiers for the Heritage Foundation and the Mackinac Center. I mean, that's basically what they create over there. Barr's speech there was ridiculous. And I think I was a little bit more disappointed that there are young people out there that are lapping this crap up. They seem to like it very much. Nancy Kaffer, who do you have as a schmuck of the week? You were so reluctant last time to do it because I know you don't like to be mean to people, but sometimes they deserve it.
No, I don't know. I feel like calling people a schmuck. It's not what I like to do, but I do feel like I could say that guy who jumped the bridge down in Southwest. I'm glad I'm not the only one who heard the Dukes of Hazzard theme song in their mind when this happened. I mean, that's like kind of a Darwin Award. And in this case, I have to say, this guy's a schmuck, but also kind of badass.
Well, think about, what was great about that story is this kid does the Dukes of Hazzard jump or a Blues Brothers jump, whichever you want to compare it to, over the drawbridge at 4th Street. And then the police say, yeah, he did it. And we believe he was under the influence of whippets.
Well, he's under the influence of something, wasn't he?
Well, nitrous oxide, apparently. So,
But please, if you have not always kind of wanted to do something like that, raise your hand.
Well, I don't. I jumped my car over the Ashland bump when I was in high school and ripped the oil pan off the bottom of the car. I learned my lesson then. I don't need to do it again.
He's a schmuck because he's an idiot and it's a Darwin Award thing and he screwed up his car and he caused public damage and he could have hurt people and
but he's a legend
himself.
Now amongst his friends are like, dude.
But also kind of
Nancy, he's just a good old boy, never meaning no harm.
Been in trouble with the law since the day he was born.
It's sort of epic schmuckness, and I should, because I always do have to be joyous and chatting. I should say that I hope he gets help for his problems.
Well,
I have to tell you, I've been doing a lot of bike riding in Southwest. This
and the whippets help.
Well, I was just going to say, I have a friend who lives over there, and we tend to meet there and ride for a few hours. There are discarded whippet canisters everywhere in that part of Detroit. So it's like
you're not wrong.
Yeah,
it's covering some protests this summer. I was wondering what these things on the ground were and thought they're way too small for what I understand like tear gas to be. Like I really didn't get what it was until later I saw somebody posting about it. But yeah, there's a lot of whippets happening around here.
I thought they were like little helium canisters for like one balloon at a time.
So like, are whippets that cool? Like
I don't know.
Hey, there's no reason the dentists give it out. So,
Are you trying to make us self-incriminate there, Nancy?
I mean, when I was growing up, and I grew up in Alabama, maybe it was like you had access to more options here in Detroit. But when people did whippets, they like had whipped cream cans or something, and they tried to get the last
right side up. You have to do it right side up so the gas comes out.
I just think you guys had a much more ready supply of spray paint down there. In Alabama,
Nancy heard it from a friend.
No, I just noticed that when I go to, you have to turn the ready whip can upside down.
Right. So if you do it right side up, that's probably
All right,
that's probably a severely.
Kids do not listen to this segment of the show. Just turn this off, parents, so your kids don't get any ideas.
Yeah, a good friend of mine who loves to go to the after hours places in Detroit say that generally whippets or nitrous oxide is distributed in balloons. You have a
right.
You fill a balloon and then you just kind of hand it to somebody. It's like oxygen.
Did nobody ever go to any Grateful Dead shows? I mean, come on now.
I also have a friend who saw that at after hours one time in the early 2000s, Nancy. So,
All right. Well, enough about whippets. All right, I do have a schmuck nominee, though. And remember, we had a subcategory that we created a few weeks ago for those that are mask-related, and we are calling those the Gomert Awards. This is a pastor in Idaho named Paul Van Noy, who has been a very anti-mask person. He's the senior pastor at a place called the Candlelight Church in Idaho, and he's a no-masker. And basically said, I pray that this mask that we will never have a mask requirement in this state. And then when it came in, he would still have services at his church and didn't want people to wear masks, told them not to. And of course, now he is in the ICU with COVID. So, Mr. Van Noy, and his wife, who said, hey, maybe we didn't take this seriously enough. Maybe we should wear the masks. So who knows how many other people in his church were infected or who in the church infected him, but he got it. He's now in intensive care and apparently on the road to recovery. But lesson learned, I hope.
So is this like the new snake handling?
Pretty much, exactly. You get bit, and if the Lord says you're fit to recover, then you recover. Otherwise, you die.
Actually, it's like a segue to talk about Jerry Falwell Jr. again, but okay.
Well, you got something? Is there something new that I did not hear about Mr. Falwell?
Well, no, he said snake handling. I'm sorry. It was just a bad segue.
Oh, I get it. Double entendre. Very good,
family
sir.
show.
Not really, but, wait.
With the whippets and the...
Now, I had a couple of comments that came in. One from Jeff, who said that the schmuck of the week should be Joe Biden. And I'm trying to figure out, Jeff, leave comments as to why Joe Biden should be the schmuck of the week. I didn't see him do anything.
Last night on CNN. I thought he was pretty steady.
Yeah, that's only because he's getting the drugs. Remember, he's getting the clear drug or whatever that stuff is that's supposed to make your brain work better. That is being pimped by Ben Carson right now.
Yeah.
So.
The Joe Biden dementia strategy is so interesting to me because all he has to do is pretty much anytime he shows up in a public appearance, it's clear he doesn't have dementia. It's like, so why are you setting the bar so incredibly low?
Right.
It's like the Joe Biden is part of the radical left strategy. Again, provably not true.
Last night I watched him and I was like, I mean, he had stamina, he had passion, he was articulate. It was like, I thought, wow, he's blown away because the bar is so low, as you say.
I unfortunately had a front row seat as both of my grandparents suffered with dementia for the remaining 5 to 7 years of their lives. It is brutal. It is ugly. It is not occasionally mistaking a word or making a gaffe or having a sentence or thought trail off. It is anyone who has witnessed dementia cannot possibly be confused about what it is.
Wholly agree.
Yeah, it's
although just to clarify, there are various stages of dementia where you have a kid, like you might have it 20% of the time, and increases
for sure. But there's also, I mean, anyone can Google the difference between Alzheimer's and normal sort of age-related memory changes and things like, I mean, I'm not going to get all boring about this, but I mean, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clearly able to going, where did I put my keys is not dementia. What are keys is, what do these do is dementia. Right. I mean, not to be really blunt about it. And obviously, like you said, there's many gradations and it's a slow and painful descent, but.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
A friend of mine in D.C., his mother had Alzheimer's, and he took her to the doctor to get a final test for clarification. And this was when Bush was president. And so the psychologist says, so do you know who the president is? And she goes, I can't remember his name, but I know I don't like him.
That's a good way to get it. But no, I agree with Nancy's point here. For anybody that has ever dealt with a relative or a friend with dementia, this is not dementia that we are seeing with Joe Biden or with Donald Trump. I mean, clearly, they're both getting older. They're in their 70s. They're going to be minor slip-ups on occasion. But to compare the two, I think is insulting to anybody that's dealt with this for a long time. And, I agree. So I just want to put that out there officially. Go ahead, Nancy.
I think just in general, when you're not a medical professional, refraining from armchair diagnoses it's a good policy.
Well, yeah.
Or even if you are most responsible medical professionals would say they can't make an armchair diagnosis without seeing the person. So, I mean, there's plenty of stuff to criticize people on policy-wise, temperament.
Okay. Well, we've got to
pandemic management.
We've got to wrap it up because if we're not careful with some of this speech, we're going to be reassigned to a new education camp so we can become more patriotic. So does anybody have a patriotic thing they'd like to say before the end to keep the Trump people off our backs?
God bless America.
Okay, there's one. Anybody else?
Let's make America great again.
There you go. Well, there you go.
Completely unironically, I love this country. I'm glad to live here. And I think that we're going to, hopefully see a change after the election and start.
Optimist.
Well, here's my patriotic statement. The best thing about living in the United States is that I can call out the bullshit that I see in this country. I can talk about policies that I think are harmful. I can talk about leaders that I think are doing the wrong thing or the right thing, and nobody is going to imprison me for it. Nobody is going to insist on some sort of re-education for me like we would see if we were in places like China. That is what makes America great. That's what we need to keep striving towards and making this place better. The fact that we actually think that we can be better is what makes America great. And we need to keep working toward it.
That and the fried clam strips you can get at a drive-thru at a White Castle.
Okay. Well, I'm a chicken rings guy there, so hey.
I need to have a word here.
Well, my patriotic statement then, thanks to all of you, is God save the Queen.
That's right.
The Crown, new episodes of The Crown are coming, Saeed.
They are, but as far as God Save the Queen, I'm not talking about the national anthem of Great Britain. I'm talking about the Sex Pistols. So that one.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, we will have to wrap things up for this week. We went a little longer than we typically do, but that's okay because there's a ton of stuff to cover this week. I would like to thank the sponsor of this program, James Oliver Coffee and jamesolivercoffee.com, for supporting us and helping us out here. Thank you very much to them. I'm a coffee junkie, and so it's very fitting that they're here for me, and I appreciate that very much. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering this broadcast today. He always does a fantastic job. And I would also like to thank my guests, Nancy Kaffer from the Detroit Free Press. It's always a pleasure to have you here. We will have you back soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Saeed Khan, lecturer at Wayne State University. Thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks again.
And again, thank you for dropping some knowledge on us as you do on international affairs, which is why I like having you on the show. Nancy Derringer, thank you as always. And Allan Lengel, thank you too.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for watching, checking it out, rating this show, recommending it, downloading the podcast. It all helps. And we're seeing the numbers go in the right direction, which is fantastic. So tell your friends, let them know you like us. If you hate us, you say, watch these guys. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. That just all helps. So keep sending traffic our way. We appreciate it. In the meantime, have a fantastic weekend, everybody. The fall weather has definitely arrived. You can tell by the sweater that I'm wearing today. And I'm going to leave it to Allan to send us home.
Stay home safely.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines. And I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.
The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at jamesolivercoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster, offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience, no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its Alma Mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CFSHOW, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at jamesolivercoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's jamesolivercoffee.com.